Hello everyone, I am Kenshin. Welcome to Talking About History. On April 8, 2024, if you have the opportunity to see a total solar eclipse in North America, but you know that there have been 6 total solar eclipses in history that changed history, let's learn about it together today. Before the show starts, please subscribe, like, and turn on the little bell. If possible, leave your thoughts. This will help the growth of the show. Without further ado, let's officially start. 6. October 22, 2134 BC. Solar eclipse spells doom for Shi and Ho. Way back when, in ancient China, there's this dusty old tome called the Shu Qing, or Book of History. Now, this isn't your average bedtime storybook. It's filled with all kinds of serious historical stuff. In its pages, there's a tale about a day that got folks all shook up because, up in the sky, the sun and moon were acting all kinds of awkward. They weren't lining up like they usually do, and that put a twist in the cosmic harmony, you see. So, the history buffs think this cryptic line is actually spilling the tea on a solar eclipse way back on October the 22nd, 2134 BC, and not just any eclipse, but one of the earliest ones we've got on the record. Now, get this. There were these 2 stargazing gents in the royal court, Shi and Ho. They were the emperor's go-to guys for celestial events and all that jazz. But, oh boy, did they drop the ball. Instead of keeping their eyes on the skies, these guys were kicking back with a few too many jars of the good stuff, totally oblivious to their one job. Surprise, surprise, they missed calling the solar eclipse. Long story short, the emperor was less than pleased about being left in the dark, both literally and figuratively. So, he decided to give Shi and Ho the chop, as in off with their heads, for snoozing through the eclipse. Quite the harsh performance review, if you ask me. 5. May 28, 585 BC, solar eclipse inspires truce between the Lydians and the Medes. Imagine this. 2 ancient armies, the Lydians and the Medes, were duking it out on the dusty plains near what's now central Turkey. They had been at each other's throats for a whopping 5 years, trying to claim the land of Anatolia as their own. The scene was set for another day of clashing swords and flying arrows by the river Halys. But then, out of nowhere, mid-battle, the sun decided to take a quick nap behind the moon, plunging the battlefield into darkness. We're talking about a total solar eclipse, folks, but back then, they didn't have the science to explain it. So, what did these hardened warriors think when daylight turned to dusk in the blink of an eye? They were sure the gods were throwing a giant celestial intervention, basically telling them to knock it off. So, what do you do when the gods tell you to stop fighting? You listen. The soldiers, probably spooked and awestruck, dropped their weapons right there on the spot. Instead of swinging swords, they started shaking hands, deciding that maybe, just maybe, a truce was a better idea than angering the powers that be. This incident, famously documented by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus, became known as the Battle of Halys, or even cooler, the Battle of the Eclipse. It's one of those wild moments in history where the stars, or in this case, the sun and moon, literally aligned to change the course of human events. And just like that, a solar eclipse stopped a war. 4. August 27, 413 BC, lunar eclipse plus superstition proved deadly for Athens. Picture this. It's smack dab in the middle of the Peloponnesian War, a massive dust-up that had Athens and Sparta throwing shade and spears at each other for decades. During this time, some Athenian troops are trying to duke it out with Syracuse, which is basically Sparta's BFF in Sicily. Things aren't exactly going peachy for Team Athens. They're on the losing end and things look grim. Enter Nicias, the Athenian head honcho, who's like, okay, folks, let's hit the pause button and regroup back home. They were all set to make a strategic exit stage left when the universe decided to toss in a dramatic twist, a lunar eclipse. Now, this isn't the cool Instagrammable kind of eclipse we'd all ooh and ah at today. Back then, stuff like this freaked people out, especially Nicias. Superstitious to the max, he takes one look at the darkened moon and goes, nope, that's a bad omen. We're staying put. Little did Nicias know, This was the universe's version of "Hold My Drink." Because the Syracusans, catching wind of the Athenians' delayed departure, decided it was the perfect time for a surprise attack. And surprise, it worked. They swooped in, knocked the Athenians off their game, and basically handed them a defeat that would go down in history books. This was no ordinary oopsie. This loss meant more than just egg on the face for Athens. It was the turning point where Athens went from being the cool kid of the Mediterranean to watching their influence slip faster than sand through the fingers. And all because a lunar eclipse spooked their commander. Goes to show, sometimes it's not just the battles that make or break you in history, it's also the heavenly bodies. 3. February 29, 1504, lunar eclipse saves Christopher Columbus from starvation. Let me spin you a yarn about Christopher Columbus, the famous guy who sailed the ocean blue back in 1492. Fast forward 12 years and there he was, chugging along the Central American coast when his ship gets the 15th century version of termites, woodworms. They chewed through the hull like it was a midnight snack, springing leaks all over the place. With water coming in fast, Columbus had no choice but to pull over on the shores of Jamaica for an unscheduled pit stop. So there they were, Columbus and his crew, stranded in Jamaica for a year-long unexpected vacay, which wasn't as fun as it sounds. The local folks, being decent and hospitable, rolled out the welcome mat, giving them food and somewhere to crash. But the honeymoon didn't last long. The Spaniards, who had about as much trade etiquette as a sea cucumber, didn't trade squat in return. Instead, some of Columbus's guys got sticky fingers, helping themselves to the local stuff. Columbus's son, Ferdinand, tells us that his old man pulled out an almanac and saw a lunar eclipse was coming up. Feeding the islanders a line, Columbus warned them that the gods were throwing a cosmic hissy fit because the Jamaicans had cut him off. He said the moon would bleed red as a divine thumbs down. Lo and behold, the night sky put on its show right on cue, the moon blushed red, and the islanders freaked out. Scared witless, they promised to keep the groceries coming. Sounds like an ancient game of psychological warfare, doesn't it? But hold your horses, some history buffs aren't buying it. They side-eye this story because the locals would have seen an eclipse about 6 years earlier and probably wouldn't have been that easy to spook. Yet, all conspiracy theories aside, we do know that an eclipse did in fact happen at that time. But the trail of the 1504 eclipse checks out, and it paints old Columbus in a tricky light, making him out to be more of a crafty navigator of human nature than a Marco Polo of the seas. 2. August 7, 1869, solar eclipse makes peace between scientists and native Alaskans. Let's take a little trip back in time to 1869, when Alaska was still the kind of place that made you think, "Here be dragons," on the map. George Davidson, a guy whose resume would read something like astronomer, explorer, and all-around brainiac, decided to pack his bags for a scientific road trip to the Chilkat Valley in Alaska. Now, Davidson wasn't new to this. He had been all over Alaska, drawing maps and naming stars, but this trip was going to be a tiny bit different. Word on the street was that the Chilkat Indians, the local residents, were not in the best of moods. Apparently, some Americans had rubbed them the wrong way, so there was a solid chance that Davidson's welcome committee might involve more spears and fewer welcome mats. On August 6, the day before he planned to watch the sun play peekaboo with the moon, a total solar eclipse, in science speak, Davidson had a sit-down with the Chilkat. Picture this: Davidson, probably sweating under his explorer's hat, trying his best to explain that he was just there for science stuff, like marking down when the day would turn into night for a hot minute, thanks to the eclipse. What went through the Chilkats' heads? Were they into it, thinking, cool, a celestial event? Or was it more, this guy's a few sandwiches short of a picnic? We can't say for sure. But what we do know is that after the eclipse, the atmosphere seemed to chill out enough for Davidson and his crew to go about their business without turning into human pincushions. 1. May 29, 1919, solar eclipse confirms Einstein's big theory. So, let's set the scene. Way back in the day, Albert Einstein drops this bombshell of an idea called general relativity. It's 1915, And he's basically saying that gravity is not so much a force pulling apples out of trees, but it's space and time getting all bendy-wendy around massive things like planets and stars. Picture space-time as a trampoline and the planets as bowling balls sitting on it. Everything else gets drawn towards them as the tramp sags under their weight. Wild, right? But here's the kicker. Back then, it's all just theory, mind-blowing, but unproven. That's where Sir Arthur Eddington comes in. He's this English physicist who decides to put Einstein's theory to the test during one of nature's most dramatic shows, a total solar eclipse. It's 1919, and Eddington and his merry band of scientists pack their telescopes and head off to see the cosmic lights go out. During an eclipse, the moon plays a game of cosmic peek-a-boo with the sun, giving us Earthlings a rare chance to see stars close to the sun that are usually outshone by Mr. Brightside himself. Now, if Einstein's theory is on the money, the sun's colossal mass should warp space around it enough to bend the light from those stars, kind of like how a straw looks bent in a glass of water. So Eddington snaps some photos, does a little math, and lo and behold, the starlight in his pictures had taken a detour right around the sun, just like Einstein said it would. This wasn't just a win for Team Einstein, it was a game changer. That cosmic light-bending act was proof that the universe was playing by some new rules, with massive objects acting like space-time sculptors. Gravity wasn't a tug, it was a push from behind, shaping the universe's very fabric. And that, my friends, is how a single eclipse helped to shine a light on one of the universe's greatest mysteries.